Luxury corrupts the soul because it teaches desire to grow faster than virtue. For the Stoics warned that comfort unchecked becomes slavery, and that the one who seeks softness at every turn finds his spirit weakened rather than strengthened. Imagine a man entering a banquet hall in Rome, the marble floors gleaming, the tables groaning under the weight of exotic foods, servants rushing to pour wines from distant lands, music echoing from gilded walls, and laughter swelling with the intoxication of excess. At first he marvels, at first he feels fortunate, but slowly, invisibly, a chain begins to close around him. For what was once delight becomes expectation, and what was once expectation becomes need, until finally he can no longer imagine life without it. The Stoics saw this chain with clarity, and they named it corruption, not of the body, but of the soul. For luxury whispers that virtue is unnecessary and that happiness can be bought, while in truth, every indulgence without measure carves away at freedom. Seneca warned his students that riches breed weakness, for silk cushions soften the body, but also soften the mind, and the man who cannot rest without luxury has already surrendered his independence. Luxury corrupts because it replaces gratitude with entitlement, turning blessings into demands, and because it blinds the soul to what is essential by dazzling it with what is trivial. Imagine again that banquet hall, and picture two men seated side by side. One eats greedily, never satisfied, already dreaming of tomorrow's feast, while the other tastes the same food, but sees in it only a passing pleasure, grateful yet unattached. When the feast ends, the first man leaves poorer than before, for his hunger has multiplied, while the second man leaves richer, for his contentment remains. This is the essence of the Stoic teaching, that luxury is not dangerous because of what it is, but because of what it does, for it reshapes desire into an endless fire that consumes peace. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor surrounded by unimaginable wealth, reminded himself daily in his meditations that the body needs little, that bread and water suffice, that the grandeur of palaces is fleeting, and that indulgence often breeds arrogance, impatience, and cruelty. He wrote that luxury is an opinion, not a necessity, and that the mind which confuses the two has already lost the ability to distinguish truth from illusion. Luxury corrupts the soul by distorting values, by making comfort seem like virtue and excess appear like success, until the individual forgets that strength is born in simplicity and character is forged in discipline. Imagine walking through a garden where rare flowers bloom, their fragrance intoxicating, their beauty overwhelming, and imagine that you are so enchanted by them that you forget the soil beneath your feet, the sun above your head, the breath in your lungs. This is what luxury does, distracting the soul from what sustains it with what dazzles it until dependence replaces freedom. Epictetus, who owned nothing, declared that the man enslaved to luxury is less free than the beggar. For the beggar can endure hardship while the rich man collapses when comfort is removed. To him, luxury was not a prize, but a test, one that many fail by confusing the delight of the senses with the health of the spirit. Consider how luxury seduces us in modern life, not only with palaces or feasts, but with devices, entertainments, and conveniences that promise joy yet leave us restless. Each new acquisition sparks a moment of satisfaction, but soon the flame dies, leaving behind only the hunger for the next indulgence. This cycle is what the Stoics feared, a restless pursuit that distracts the soul from wisdom, virtue, and true freedom. They taught that the more a man owns, the more he is owned, and that the pursuit of endless luxury is the surest path to poverty of the spirit. Seneca wrote that the man who prepares himself for poverty is rich even in abundance, for he has stripped luxury of its power. But the man who clings to luxury is poor even in wealth, for he trembles at the thought of losing it. Imagine again the man who once delighted in simple bread, who later tasted honey and grew fond of it, who then demanded honey each day, who then scorned bread as unworthy. His joy has not increased, his peace has not deepened, only his dependence has multiplied. This is the hidden corruption of luxury, that it never stops at enough, that it always demands more, and that it robs the soul of resilience by making every discomfort unbearable. The Stoics therefore practiced voluntary hardship, sleeping on the ground, eating simple meals, dressing in plain clothing, not to punish themselves, but to remind themselves that joy does not depend. By rehearsing life without indulgence, they strengthened their souls against corruption, training themselves to greet fortune with gratitude and misfortune with calm. For the one who can live with little is invincible, while the one who requires luxury is fragile, trembling at the slightest loss. Luxury corrupts also by narrowing vision, by turning the gaze inward to endless desire rather than outward to duty, justice, and service. The man intoxicated by luxury no longer sees the suffering of others, no longer feels the call of virtue, for his world has shrunk to the pursuit of his own comfort. Marcus Aurelius warned against this blindness, reminding himself that man is born for the sake of others, that the true purpose of life is to act with justice, and that the pursuit of luxury is a betrayal of this duty. Luxury makes us forget that we are part of a larger whole, distracting us with ornaments while the deeper work of the soul is neglected. Imagine again that banquet, the tables piled high while the poor starve outside the gates, and imagine how easily luxury convinces those inside that this is natural, that this is deserved, that this is good. In that illusion lies corruption, for the soul that accepts injustice in order to protect indulgence has already lost its virtue. The Stoics would ask us whether our wealth serves virtue or whether it serves desire, whether our comforts make us stronger or weaker, and whether our pursuit of luxury has blinded us to the needs of the world. Luxury corrupts because it promises happiness yet delivers emptiness, because it offers comfort, yet plants fear, because it distracts with abundance, yet leaves the soul impoverished. The Stoic answer is not to flee all pleasure, but to master it, to enjoy without attachment, to accept without dependence, and to remember always that the measure of a man is not in his luxuries, but in his character. To walk through the world with this wisdom is to be free amid abundance and calm amid loss, to taste sweetness without being enslaved by it, and to hold riches without being held by them. As the banquet ends, as the music fades, as the palace grows silent, the Stoic rises and departs with the same serenity with which he entered, carrying nothing yet lacking nothing, for his treasure is within, untouched by luxury and uncorrupted by excess. The corruption of luxury is subtle, because it does not announce itself with violence, but arrives wrapped in beauty and ease, whispering that one deserves more, that one should never be denied. And in that whisper, the fortress of the soul begins to crumble. Seneca cautioned that luxury makes slaves of those who appear free, for they obey their cravings more faithfully than any master, and in serving comfort, they lose the strength to endure hardship. Imagine a soldier who once trained in the cold and the rain, hardened by simplicity, who later indulges in silken beds and endless feasts, and who then finds himself unable to march, unable to fight, unable to suffer even a moment of discomfort. Luxury has robbed him not only of resilience, but of the very virtues that once defined him. This decay is gradual, often unnoticed, until the soul that once stood firm against fortune bends at the slightest inconvenience. Epictetus warned his students that luxury blinds us to what is necessary by inflating what is unnecessary, and that the greatest loss is not the loss of possessions, but the loss of perspective. To live surrounded by excess is to forget that joy can be found in the simplest of things, the taste of bread, the warmth of the sun, the companionship of a friend. The corruption comes when we begin to despise simplicity, when we can no longer see beauty in the ordinary because our senses have been dulled by indulgence. Imagine a man who once marveled at the stars, but who now finds them dim because his eyes crave the glitter of jewels. He has not gained delight, he has lost it. This is why the Stoics insisted that the path to freedom required discipline against luxury, that the soul must be trained to remain unmoved by glittering distractions and to cling instead to virtue as its only treasure. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the pursuit of pleasure leads to dissatisfaction, that the more one consumes, the more one desires, and that only the mind that governs itself can find peace. He saw that luxury corrupts not only individuals, but entire societies. For when people grow obsessed with indulgence, they forget justice, courage, and wisdom, and their cities collapse under the weight of greed. Rome itself, he observed, grew weaker as its citizens grew softer, trading virtue for comfort until the empire rotted from within. This lesson rings loudly across ages, reminding us that luxury does not merely corrupt one soul at a time, but can corrode entire civilizations. Consider our own age, with its abundance of convenience, entertainment, and endless consumption. We are surrounded by luxuries unimaginable to emperors, yet anxiety and dissatisfaction flourish. The Stoic would say this is no accident, for luxury trains the soul to crave rather than to be content, and when craving becomes endless, peace becomes impossible. The man who cannot sit in silence without distraction, who cannot eat a simple meal without boredom, who cannot endure discomfort without despair, is already enslaved, no matter how great his wealth. The corruption of luxury is thus a theft, stealing resilience, gratitude, and perspective, replacing them with weakness, entitlement, and blindness. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship as an antidote, choosing at times to live as if they were poor, to remind themselves that joy was not bound to wealth. By doing so, they broke the spell of luxury, proving to themselves that they could live with less, and in that proof, they found freedom. For when the soul knows it can survive without indulgence, luxury loses its power to corrupt. Imagine yourself setting aside for a day the comforts you normally depend on, living simply, eating plainly, walking without adornment, and discovering in that simplicity a quiet strength you had forgotten. That strength is the wealth of the Stoic, a wealth immune to fortune, a wealth untouched by the corruption of luxury. The final question that Stoic philosophy leaves us with is not whether luxury will tempt us, for it always will, but whether we will remain its masters or become its slaves. Will we let the softness of excess erode our courage, our justice, our wisdom, or will we use discipline to preserve the soul against corruption? Luxury offers glitter, but virtue offers light, and in choosing between them we decide whether our lives will be spent chasing shadows or walking in truth. As the night falls on the banquet halls of history, as the jewels dim and the feasts decay, what remains is not the luxury that corrupted but the virtue that endured. And so we are asked to look inward and to decide for ourselves, will we allow luxury to corrupt our souls, or will we dare to live free, needing less, and in that freedom discover a treasure that cannot be bought or lost?